So one of the central aspect of doing mindfulness practice, practicing meditation, is attention. And there's a wonderful verb, activity, associated with attention that I just really love, that we use in kind of common English. We say sometimes giving attention. We give attention to something. And so I think that for much of my life, I just took that word, that expression, to mean, the same as pay attention, which seems like a strange word concept to me. But to give attention has the idea of giving, of generosity, an offering that we make. And what if your attention was a worthy gift? What if attention is an act of generosity that we do with attention to ourselves? The attention is so precious, so valuable, that when we offer it to ourselves, or offer it to the world, it has some of the wonderful rebound effects of generosity. That when we're generous, when you're a host for someone, that part of the delight of it is the kind of delightful giving away or putting aside some kind of self-preoccupation, self-concern. If the Dalai Lama came to your house for tea and you knew he was coming, you would probably try to be a good host. And if you had a favorite chair that's your chair, you would probably let the Dalai Lama sit in that chair. And if you had just a last tea that your favorite tea that you want to keep for a special occasion for yourself, but the Dalai Lama comes, here, have my best tea. And there's a certain kind of putting aside self-concern, self-preoccupation, at the same time as asserting oneself in a certain wonderful way in giving, in an act of generosity, when we bring attention to ourselves or bring attention to anything. So perhaps for today, when we sit to meditate, you might want to consider a way of engaging your attention that feels more like a gift than a debt that you're paying for, paying attention. More like a act of generosity that's freeing in the giving. Here, have this. And it just feels so good to let go, to open up. Just here, have this. Here, have this attention. And then see what happens. And do it again. And do it again. Generous with your attention. So sitting in a alert meditation posture. And perhaps with your eyes closed or not, you can allow for a gentling of your inner life, a calming of your body, a calming of your mind. And every moment that you are attentive for anything you're doing while you're meditating, the attention part of it, see if that can be a giving, a generosity. So in attending to taking a few deep breaths at the beginning, an act of generosity to yourself to feel, be present for those deep breaths. If you relax on the exhale, being present for the relaxation is the gift. Letting your breathing return to normal. And continuing to maybe relax on the exhale, where the attention given to relax and the attention given to feel the relaxation are gifts you give yourself. And then to settle into your breathing. Settle into the breathing body. Your body that's breathing. And in what way can you let it be a gift? An act of generosity to offer attention to this body that's breathing. The breathing body has been serving you for years and years, keeping you alive. And now you offer your attention back. A generosity that can't be a duty, can't be a strain, can't be a forceful or aggressive. An attention that feels generous, open, allowing, respectful, giving attention, offering attention moment by moment, just now to what's here. then as we come to the end of this sitting, to consider, to imagine different ways to offer your attention to others, to give the gift of attention to other people, where your attention is attentive, not demanding or expecting, where your attention is available, not assertive, where attention is friendly, not mistrustful, where we begin, the default is with a generous attention, an offering to be present for people as they are, carrying with it a feeling of being generous, trusting, available to discover what is here. And in doing so, may we see people more fully, see them in ways that engender our goodwill, our care, maybe even our love. And may it be that this practice of mindfulness that we do supports us in offering the gifts of goodwill, safety, peace, and freedom to others. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings be peaceful. And may all beings be free. So good morning, everyone. And I want to ask first, is it loud enough here for you? People in here at IMC, and I wonder if it's loud enough for people on the volumes, high enough for people online. And for those of you who came in person, thank you. I'm hoping that this is a beginning of a direction that we start feeling we can be more open and come together in community more often. And it's a wonderful thing to practice together. So it looks like the sound is good, loud enough online. Thank you. So today I'd like to talk about one of the core virtues, or core practices and attitudes and kind of realizations of Buddhism, and that is generosity. And in talking about generosity, I would like to talk about it in three areas: that of giving, that of gift, and that of generosity. And if we begin by giving, there's many ways of giving. We can give freely, and we can give expectingly or demandingly or obligatorily. There's a whole range of giving. But giving in all its forms is really integral to what human beings, how they are and how we live. And our societies, our communities, our families often are held together in a network of giving, that without people giving of themselves, giving, supporting, there'd probably be very little real community and connection anywhere we go. I was really struck as I was raising children here in Redwood City that my kids participated in all kinds of sports, soccer and baseball mostly, basketball. And there was a whole bunch of parents who volunteered their times to be coaches, to be managers to the teams, and to set things up, and all kinds of things. And I was struck that this was a really important part and valuable part of my children's upbringing, to be able to be part of the community in this way, both be able to play and have fun and be with other kids, but also they felt connected to the Redwood City community of parents and wider community, like they're a part of something bigger than just our family. And it wouldn't have happened, I think, unless it was all these adults who volunteered their time. They gave of themselves, and they knitted the community in certain ways together. Sometimes, occasionally it happens, it did happen to me when I started being a new parent. I had the thought, what? My parents did this for me? My parents, sacrificed this much or gave so much of themselves, for me. I had no idea that that's how it worked. I never thought about it. I just kind of took my parents for granted. I don't have memories of when I was a baby, so just, I didn't think about it. But as a new parent, certainly it was a lot of work, a lot of demands, and, up all night sometimes with the kids, waking up in the middle of the night and feeding and this and that. And when they were when they were babies and could do almost nothing of themselves, it just felt, for the most part, just very natural to give time and effort and all this. And I didn't think of myself as being generous, but it did feel, when I wasn't too tired, it just felt a delight. And part of the delight was the way in which I became, in a certain, I would say, I hope to hopefully healthy way, my needs became unimportant. And so it didn't matter if, I was sleepy or next day or tired. It didn't matter if I wasn't thinking about, that, the fact that I hadn't showered in 3 days, that anybody would care. The fact that, I was still in my pajamas at 1 p.m. because there hadn't been any time to do anything else, and someone came to the door or something. All these things that maybe ordinarily I would have been self-conscious about or had ideas about or something, they fell away. And in the early period of babyhood, it felt really freeing to have this sense of self-concern drop away so fully and completely. And then as the children could do more for themselves, then it felt natural enough and to become more important again. My situation became something to care for and take care of, and that grew over. And now they're not even home anymore, so it's a whole different story of how to be. And but without that kind of someone giving themselves to babies, babies don't grow up very well. But the feeling that there's people there caring, attending to them, is formative, even if they don't remember their babyhood. There's all kinds of ways in which, if it goes well, they feel safe in this world. They feel belonging in this world that they're not going to feel if they feel, repeatedly abandoned and no one was there to care for them. And so this healthy growth of people depends a lot on, it's something you could almost not pay someone enough to do, because there has to be this more than just a job. I think it has to be a love. a care that's infused in the giving. And so the societies kind of, to a great extent, depend on it. Here in the United States, there's a culture of nonprofit giving. Maybe it arises out of the church, religious scene here in this country, that where there's a kind of a understood way that of giving to nonprofits, to churches, to causes, all kinds of things, that is kind of absent in Europe. And people in Europe are certainly generous, but they don't have the same relationship to organizations like this, partly because maybe the government fills in. The governments there take care of people in a much different way, a more extensive way than here in this country. So here, often we have to do it then because the government is not filling in or not expected to do certain things. And so the Society of Giving. Many years ago, in the early 70s, I read a study, anthropological study of some people's community, tribe or something in the Philippines that lived somewhat removed from modern society. And they were a dream culture. Apparently one of the central features of their community was focusing on dreams. And they would wake up in the morning and tell their family about their dreams they had. And so dreams were kind of central. But one of the customs they had was that if someone had a dream, a kind of bad dream, or a dream that where someone in the village, in the town, was somehow, the relationship was strained or difficult, or there was some kind of challenge there in the dream, when they woke up in the morning, they would go give that person in the village a gift. What a phenomenal thing to do. I don't know what the unconscious is doing, when it shows a difficult relationship in a dream. But that fact that they would respond to that with a gift, what does that do to this community? What does that do about the relationships and how people relate to each other? I recently talked to someone who had a very difficult landlord. Seemed to the landlord was just kind of unreasonable in demands and expectations and all kinds of things. And said, what should I do when I go back to, been away for a while? And I didn't know what to say exactly, except the one thing that is kind of the Buddhist thing to say. I said, when you go back, bring a gift for your landlord. And the person was kind of a little bit shocked. Like, what? This person's so difficult. But yeah, bring a gift. And maybe bake some cookies or buy something or do, before you go. And just bring it and say, I was thinking about you on my retreat, and I just wanted to bring you a gift or something. And I've offered this advice to other people who had like difficult in-laws, and it turns out that it's a kind of a leavening, a kind of a tenderizing. Something changes when we bring gifts that sometimes can't happen if we don't. They lower their guard somehow, or they soften. There's no guarantee, of course. But the emphasis I want to make here is that giving is a huge part of our lives. And for me, at least, I think I underappreciated it growing up. I didn't understand the extent of it. So then, if giving is kind of in the network of our human connections, one of the features of that is the gift that's given. And there's many gifts that can be given. There's a giving of our time, a giving of our services, giving of material goods, giving of money. There's all these things that are given of smiles. Just, giving smiles is a wonderful thing to do. And that's a little hard with these masks on. And sometimes I want people to see me smile because I just want them to feel my appreciation, delight in seeing them, being with them. And I realize, what a wonderful thing it is to communicate the light and appreciation that's so harder with these masks on. And I don't think there too I had thought about it too much. I just kind of was smiling and just because I was happy. And now I want to be able to, it's almost like a communication that's being gifted or something. what's interesting about the gift in Buddhism, in Indian Buddhism, is that it's one of the word for gift and for giving is dana, D-A-N-A, and some of the ways that the Buddha used the word dana were somewhat equivalent but different from the early Indian idea of sacrifice, which is a different word. It's a yajna, and but he kind of used it in similar ways. And so I'll give you one example. One of the things that in some of the religions of his time, they would make sacrifices to the gods. That was a big part of the sacrifice, was for the gods. And so some of the gods was Brahma, one of the great gods. And the Buddha said that your parents and your family, especially your parents, are Brahma. So here he's redefining what a god is, from some invisible god up in the heavens to people who are tangible in this world, people you know, your parents. They're your Brahma, they're your god. And then he said, give gifts to them. So rather than giving a gift, the offering, the sacrifice to Brahma in heaven, the Buddha is redefining the notion of giving to what's happening in our immediate experienced world, our social world here and now. We might not think very much of this, but I think in the ancient world there was a big change from where the central focus of some people's religious life was all these elaborate rituals of sacrifice for the gods. And the Buddha was changing it where the religious giving was not a sacrifice to invisible gods, but a giving of generously to people who were known and here in their society. And so the word dana has this religious quality in Buddhism. It's a gift which is somehow carries spirituality in it. And exactly how it carries spirituality, each of us can find out for ourselves. But it has a heightened value, the gift of dana. There are other words for giving in Pali, in Buddhist language, than dana, but dana is often like the sacrifice were religious in nature. Dana also has a religious nature to it. And we see that in some of the lists of things that you can give. You can give ethics, your virtue. You can living by the precepts is the gift of ethics, of virtue, a gift of safety. You can give your kindness. You can give material goods, possessions. You can give the gift of fearlessness, that people don't have any reason to fear you. And so these different kind of things that you can give are pointing back to some quality that we have inside. And so to give. And then there's the giving, and then there's the gift. And then the different gifts have different values. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated and often challenging for people in the modern West to appreciate some of the logic that's used in Buddhism for having value on gifts. And part of the idea of the value of gift giving, the gift, where you give a gift, what you give, is because gifts have an impact on the giver. We like to think, I think, often we're kind of be altruistic, and we just give without any concern for ourselves. To have any concern for ourselves, like we benefit from the giving, maybe is selfish. It can be selfish. We have to be on the guard for that, I hope. But self-regard and self-care doesn't have to be selfish. And so one of the things that Buddha talked about was give gifts that bring you joy. Bring gifts that are uplifting, that inspire you. And because so that you benefit as well. So the gift goes in both directions. You're both gifting someone else, but you're benefiting from your own gift. And so it's kind of a gift to yourself as well. So for one of the things he said was, for example, he encouraged people, remember it's an ancient world, 2,500 years in the Bronze Era age. uh, he said, give with your hands, give directly. And, we should stop, please don't stop donating to organizations, online or whatever way you do, for sure. But something different happens when we give in person. I know someone who liked to, they used to, I don't know if it's still here, but there's this thing, something called a free cycle. And you would post your things you have available, and someone would come to your home and you would give it to them personally. And the person said, I could go and give it to the Goodwill, but then it's impersonal. And when I give it to someone directly who can use it, it just feels so much more inspiring and nicer. And afterwards I feel and remember this thing, oh, this is a good thing. That's very different than just giving to the Goodwill. If you give, for example, $10 to someone who clearly seems destitute and challenged in all kinds of ways, and then you find out that the person uses that to buy alcohol, well, maybe it was still useful because the person felt someone cared for them, and that's a little memory that someone cared and was attentive to them, and they weren't abandoned completely. So maybe it had some benefit. But then you give $10 to someone else, some teenager, for example, who's quite poor, but with that $10, they could buy, maybe they were able to buy, maybe this is the old world now, but paper and pen, so they could write their college essay to apply for college. And with that essay, they got into college, and they came to you and said, later said, by the way, you gave me the $10. What I did with it was I bought this paper, bought these pens. I was able to go and just kind of in my free time keep writing and writing that essay with that block of paper. I didn't have any paper at home. This was phenomenal that I could, and you helped me get into college. Without it, I don't think I would have gotten to college. So there's different value in where we give, in terms of our happiness and our inspiration, our delight. I think some people really dislike this idea of putting value like that because then sometimes there's a feeling, well, some poor people don't deserve our gifts. And we should just give the places where it's really wonderful to give. And you see this in some Buddhist cultures. In Asia, I saw it, and maybe here too in this country, where some Buddhist centers, temples, were clearly over the top wealthy. And people would come with gifts to the temple. And on the street, on the sidewalk outside, or living nearby, are people who are really destitute, really impoverished. And people would just walk right by them and give to the temple. There is value in giving to people who are poor and have the great need. So how do we see? How do we decide where to give? How do we decide what gifts to give? Is part of a considered life, a reflective life. I don't think there's any clear and obvious answers to the question, but the Buddha's idea that you give somewhat personally, so you're giving part of yourself in the process, and also that you're giving in a way that inspires you, that brings you delight and joy. He also said, the Buddha said, don't give harming others or harming yourself. That's also a very interesting guideline for this. Don't give in a way that harms yourself. Or sometimes you can harm other people through giving. And so this is not a call for, some kind of harmful self-sacrifice, just give at all costs. But to do it in a way that you benefit from it. And if you give in a miserly way, there's maybe not so much benefit. But if you give in a generously way, then there's a lot of benefit. And then there's for yourself. And then then we go to the third thing today: generosity, giving, gift, and generosity. That generosity, you can give without it really being generous. But it's also possible to give with generosity. And generosity is this beautiful quality where things are given that are not obligated to give. You can give when it's obligated to give, and it's just an obligation. But generosity can never be obligatory. It's always giving more than is expected and more than is called for. And so it's a kind of opening up to something that's given from us freely, a kind of an inspiration, a delight, a opening up, a letting go, to give in a nice way from a good heart, from a good mind, a healthy mind, a good mind. I want to do this. This is great. This doesn't harm me. This maybe benefits the person or brings joy or delight. And it just feels so warm-hearted and delightful to do this thing. Oh yeah, give. There was a time when I was young, when I started to do the practice of generosity and giving, that I kind of would give, and not miserly exactly, but I would give, but I was a little bit tight and closed because I didn't feel like I should enjoy it. I didn't feel like I should kind of like that I should be somehow, if I felt kind of all good from doing it, that somehow that diminished the giving. But I've learned since then that this is actually the opposite. That the more delight I have in giving, the more it seems like other people can feel it's really given freely and generously. And I've certainly felt it that way. I've received things from people where I felt that they wanted to do it, but there also was a challenge for them and struggle for them, and then it was a struggle for me to really appreciate it. But then I've had people just kind of, wow, that's so easy for that person. It's like so fully, just clearly offered. And then I have a whole different feeling for it. Oh, that's just good. Then I can enjoy it more and take it in. And so one of the features of this word dana in Buddhism, that in the Buddhist sense of the word, that's kind of a religious giving, spiritual giving. As I said, there's other words in Pali for just all other kinds of giving. But the tendency is for dana to have a spiritual or religious quality to it. And one of the qualities of it is that it's freely given. And maybe that's what generosity means, but it's freely offered, with kind of with no expectations of an exchange, but perhaps with an expectation that this is healthy and good for everyone involved, including oneself. That we benefit from it ourselves, and that somehow it feeds the good qualities, it nurtures the best qualities of our heart. To be generous supports generosity in ourselves. And if generosity feels like a warm-hearted kind of offering and opening and letting go, then we benefit. And we see this a little bit with the Pali word for generosity. The Pali word is chaga, C-A-G-A. And the first meaning in the dictionary is not generosity, but it's letting go. And then the second definition has to do with generosity. But it makes some sense. When you give something, you're also letting it go. And so rather than calling it letting go, we could use the languages like giving up, giving over, because then it has the word giving in it, which, since the chaga has both that meaning, to renounce something and being generous. And how this becomes beautiful is that when the letting go, when the giving up is so freely and unrestrainedly given, that it just feeds a lightness, an openness, a softness, a warmth to ourselves. Like our heart begins to sing because in the letting go and the freedom. Letting go is not supposed to diminish us, but to enhance beautiful qualities within. There's a story two stories from the ancient Indian tradition of there's in Buddhism traditionally there's all these ideas that you make a lot of merit, make good karma for yourself if you give. And there were these two people who were friends, and they wanted to acquire lots of good merit for themselves, build up their store of merit. So they decided, why don't we just give back and forth? I'll give you something, then you give it to me, and I'll give it to you. And so when they died, they got reborn as poisoned wells. They were just kind of poisoning each other by doing that rather than doing something really good. And then there's a story of a monk who had been given a golden begging bowl. And he was going to go to sleep one time in a grove of trees, and he noticed a thief was lurking behind the trees, seemingly to wait for him to fall asleep so he can come and pick up the bowl and steal it. So the monk sat up and said, "Hey, come over here." And he handed him the bowl. "Here, this is for you. You can have it." And the guy was so happy. He got the golden bowl. He ran off and, he didn't have to steal it. It was given. And then he came back. The next morning he came back into the monk and said, I have never known anyone to give so freely and not be attached to what they have. And you were so open-handed in how you gave it to me and without attachment to this wealth, this thing. How did you manage to do that? And then the thief became the monk's student. And then they lived happily ever after, I guess. And so these are fables, but they point to something. And so this monk being able to give so generously was inspiring for the thief. But the way that the Buddhism understands the ecology of the heart, of the mind, the monk was also benefiting from that. Something was opening and freeing and being supported in the person who was giving as well. And one of the ways that this is discussed in the ancient tradition, or in Buddhism, is that one of the purposes of giving, when it's done well, generously, maybe in a certain kind of selfless way, is that it beautifies the mind. So giving that beautifies your mind. So isn't that great it's kind of great if you're kind of selfish, but you realize you can't be selfish, so you give up your selfishness, so you can, so that you can give freely, so you can get this benefit of getting a beautiful mind. It's a strange logic, right? But sorry. But this idea that, that's, if you give cleanly and openly and freely, it does something for us. And the reason to emphasize that is that it's good to be available for the nourishment, the support, the benefit that comes internally when we do good things. We count. We're important as well. And allowing ourselves to benefit, to grow in the Dharma, to grow in good qualities and skillful qualities, grow in wholesomeness, is one of the great things to do in human life. It's how we can mature as an adult, as a practitioner. And you mature more if you allow yourself to feel, to be present for the benefits, present for how things shift internally in a good direction. So if your generosity is such that if you do it miserly, then maybe there's not that warmth and nourishment and wholesomeness inside. But if you give freely and openly, you learn that way, then something inside benefits. And that's so what makes it spiritual in Buddhism, I propose, is that generosity is offered freely and openly. It's offered wisely with some attention to the consequence of giving and who you're giving to and why and where it's inspiring. And it's giving that also supports the growth of wholesome, beneficial, beautiful qualities of mind, of heart, for yourself and for others. And the protection that provides from selfishness, when you're concerned with beautifying your mind, is that selfishness is, if I'm allowed to use this, maybe you'll forgive me or you reword it, uglifies the mind. It sullies the mind to be selfish. And so as we kind of get a sense of this beautiful, open clarity, luminosity of the heart, the mind, the warmth, the glow, you'll feel that the selfishness contracts it, and clouds it over. And so there's this wonderful way that attending to the beauty of your own inner life supports greater and greater freedom. And so when you're going to sleep in a grove of trees with your golden bowl next to you, and someone clearly wants it, maybe it's easy for you to let them have it, to give it to them. And one of the gifts of that is that the person doesn't get the bad karma of stealing. You save them from that karma by giving it first. So, giving, gift, and generosity. The word for generosity also means to let go, to renounce, and it's a very special meaning in Buddhism, very special kind of part of the deep letting go of liberation. So finally, I'd like to say that this idea of giving is also a practice in Buddhism. And what that means is that sometimes it's useful to give even when you don't feel like it, because it begins to it can be a mirror to understand ourselves better, to understand where we're holding on, where we're afraid, where we're calculating in all kinds of ways about why we should give and how we should give, and all these, and to give where it feels difficult, and to stretch in order to learn more about ourselves, and to learn what it's like to let go, and to trust what we're doing. So, for example, there's all kinds of ways we can practice generosity. You can practice generosity driving a car, where you always give someone, your practice is, no matter what, you always give the other person the right of way. It's a kind of generosity. You never force yourself, even if it seems like, it's your right or something, but you kind of practice. It could be that you see that you're in the store, and the question is in the supermarket, which checkout line do you stand in? And normally you might calculate, where's the one that's going to go fastest, and the shortest for me? And then you see one up ahead, and you see someone else is heading there too. You're slightly ahead, so you can get there first, and you get it. What's the generous thing to do? Most people are eager to get through those lines. You have it. You hold back and let the person have it and find another one. These are simple things to do, maybe. But you do it as a practice. Means you do it so you can study yourself and learn what's going on and stretch something and discover how you're challenged by it, and see, is it really necessary what you're holding on to? And you're holding on to more than just, who knows what you're holding on to, discover. Another nice practice is to take, I don't know if it doesn't, again, these things don't work so well anymore. Our society's changing so much, maybe. But worked better before, when to carry with you some significant amount of cash, when people weren't when it was much more of a cash economy, I guess. And I don't know what's a lot money, but $20 or $50 cash or something. And then have the practice of looking at, studying as you go through your days, of someone you can give it to that you don't know. someone you can give it to that just seems like, okay, this person I think I'll give it to. And then see what comes up. And maybe you never give it, but a lot came up and you learned a lot about yourself in the process. Or maybe you do, and then you learn some things. And maybe you learn that was a mistake. But the idea is a practice to do as well. And it's a practice that supports the exploration of the beautiful possibilities of giving, of gift, of beautifying the mind. And the most profound reason in Buddhism to give is to discover how to be free, not to be clinging to anything. So giving, gift, and generosity are three topics that are well worth reflecting on, living with, focusing on as part of the wider world of practicing mindfulness. So thank you. And then coincidentally, Nancy came up to me before this talk and was just mentioned there's an opportunity for some people to do something generous here at IMC. And she was going to ask for some volunteers. And do you want to ask? Do you need to use the mic, or maybe let's get the mic, and that way at least the people online can also hear. Otherwise they're going to be curious.
Thank you. If I could get 5 or 6 people to help outside, to help pick up trash.
I think the battery is low. Is the green light on?
To help outside to pick up trash and sweep and do a little weeding for like 15 minutes. I think we could get a lot done.
So they can meet you just out in the hallway there, in that bigger hall?
Actually, if you can meet me out in the parking lot, just out the back door would be great when you get your shoes on. I also have gloves for picking up trash.
Great. Well, thank you all. And I wish you all well in the world where we giver and gift and receiver maybe are all interpenetrating each other, all mutual, and all kind of disappear in each other. Can we really tell what is the gift, and what is the receiver? So, thank you.